I'm more interested, if I was talking to Tim Kennedy, of what his perspective on his life is. The dude was a brilliant military man.
He's done more outside of the cage than he did in.
And that sort of journey of his life, he spent a few years of it in a cage on television, beating up other men in his underpants.
The world's most interesting man.
Exactly.
Kennedy.
That's who he is.
Yeah.
You know, what did he mean to this sport of fighting that was only one segment of his life? He showed up. He had some great fights. He was entertaining. He was a great athlete. He was fearless. But I think in the story of Tim Kennedy's life, fighting is a couple of chapters. And that's fucking cool, to go through your life and be able to do a number of things, and all of them very well. You're right, he's the world's most interesting man. And he was a motherfucker. Like, you don't want to get hit.
No
all the
way.
more reason in Toronto to be blown away by Kelvin Gastelum. Like, the dude went in there with an immense, powerful, fearless, and I oddly was at my wife's closing. She was doing a musical here, and the woman who dressed the actors and the performers was from Texas, and I just happened to bump in. Her boyfriend came up, and he trains with Tim Kennedy, and he's a big dude, big, powerful firefighter, and he's like, you have no idea this guy's strength. It's just his physical strength. He's technically good enough to use it, but physically he's so incredibly powerful. And Kelvin took those, and he was even mentioned. He's like, against the cage, when he knees you in the butt or the hips, it's so brutal. Kelvin took 8, 10, 12, 14 of those in round one, still went out and danced around him and beat him up. That's impressive. Gastelum could be a very real welterweight champion one day. When you can beat Tim Kennedy like that, that's pretty fucking impressive.
Well, if you're Tim Kennedy, now you lose this fight. And I think we often see this. If you're an older fighter and you lose to a top contender, you go back to the drawing board, and sometimes you can't make sense of the board. It doesn't make any sense to you. Where do I go from here? I just won a pile of fights. I got to win over Michael Bisping. How do I get, now I've lost to Yoel Romero, lost to Kelvin Gastelum, who's a welterweight who's moving up. Conceivably, I'm not going to get this title shot anymore. I don't want to build my back. My guy, Kurt Pellegrino, way back when, he also did come out of retirement, but he said the same thing when he lost to the UFC. I'm not going to go on another 4 or 5 fight winning streak and earn my way back up. So this is pretty much end of the line for me, and then he retires. But there's always that competitive fire to come back. We see it with BJ Penn. And whether you want them to come back or not.
There's a million things you can compete in your life. They don't all have to give you brain damage. And guys like Kennedy, whose life is so rich and full, doesn't need this to define him. Forrest is the same way. Forrest, he has an interesting life and family and interests and hobbies, and he likes working and
But
stuff.
if not for a shoulder injury, would he still be fighting?
Forrest literally said, so Brian Stann fought Vanderlei Silva in the fucking mental fight.
And that retired Forrest Griffin.
Vanderlei Silva retired 2 men that night.
I know.
He retired Forrest Griffin and retired Brian Stann. But think about both Forrest Griffin and Brian Stann. They have full lives. Brian is a brilliant broadcaster. He runs a charity for military people. He's got a family. He stacks his day. His day book is stacked with fascinating things, and so is Forrest. And so that's why, when you see these guys who don't retire sometimes, or like BJ, is his life just not full enough? Or is it full, and this is the thing that he loves so much he can't let it go?
Yeah. Well, there's 2 ways of going about it. On one hand, this is a thing he's done his entire life. So you can take a sabbatical, you can take a vacation, you can take a break, whatever it be, eventually. And you know this, man, because you've retired a couple times as well, and you've come out of retirement because the fire is still there.
I still think about doing it. I still I train in the gym 3 days straight, and I'm like, I could go.
I feel good physically.
I could go
a 6-week camp, who knows? But if I was to take something, exactly.
But imagine now. But I also have this, my fucking work that I love, right?
And
I have all these things, so it becomes this fantasy for a night, and you go get a couple beers with your friends. Oh fuck, you could still do it, bro, and you laugh, and then you go back to all these things, but that you love, the life that you've created. But if you didn't have these things, and the only time in the day that you got yourself revved up was when the idea of fighting came. When that went away, what do you have? You're uncertain. You don't know how to define yourself. You go back to your regular thing that you don't like.
Well, now you're not happy. And like you said, you're going out and you're having beers and you're thinking about it.
Fuck,
and you're
I could totally do this.
You're at the gym and you're thinking about it, right?
Exactly.
If it's consuming your life and it's all you're thinking about, then eventually you're going to have to itch that hunger, and you're going to have to get in there. And that's the sad thing with BJ. He talks to Pollock and he says, guys talk about there's more to life than fighting, but there's nothing more to my life then fighting. And then you're like, oh, geez, guy like Chael Sonnen. One of my favorite Chael Sonnen quotes of all times. And he's got a lot of good quotes.
Yeah.
But it doesn't apply to my life. But he says, and he's talking about the UFC title. That man has what I want, and envy keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
That's some heavy shit, man.
Yeah, for sure.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
What he's saying is, I go to bed every night thinking about having that belt strapped around my waist. So my question for you is,
BJ said the same thing the other day. He said maybe if I got a third belt, maybe I'd be able to sleep at night.
No,
you're fucking BJ Penn.
Like, never. Now you want to defend the belt. Well, I want it, but like Matt Hughes says, you're a paper champion. Let's defend. I gotta defend it. Then you defend it. I just defended the world title against the #1 ranked contender.
Now I'm making real money. Maybe I should do 2 more.
Now I gotta keep on going. And if you look good against the #1 contender, well, I just look good against the #1 contender. But you see this outpour of fans online. You got to retire BJ Penn. This is a grown man. Choice is his. Yeah. And the funny thing to me is he's losing to top 5, top 10 contenders like Yair Rodriguez or Frankie Edgar. He's getting decimated. You don't want to see him anymore. But if this guy gets released and he signs with Bellator and they give him conceivably a guy like Cole Miller fights in the UFC, but you know what I mean? People are more excited for that fight because now it's like, oh, he's got a chance. I want to see him when he has a chance. I don't want to see him. People don't want to see Tito Ortiz fight in the UFC. Yeah. But do you want to see him fight in Bellator?
I want to see him fight Chael because that makes sense.
I wanted to see the other fights. I'm guilty of it.
Always, my take has always been that you're a grown man in a free society. People sitting in a chair smoking cigarettes and drinking beer have no bearing, and the opinion of people, oh, he needs to retire, is a pointless and meaningless thing. If your family is trying to talk to you about it, you can listen, but it's still your choice. If a doctor says you can't do it, well, now you can't do it. If the people who run the show say they don't want you to do it, you could do it somewhere else. You're a grown man.
You can always do it somewhere else. That's the sad part. You can always do it somewhere else if you want to.
I shouldn't eat a box of donuts. If I eat a box of donuts every day, that is more dangerous for me than BJ Penn fighting once a year. It is absolutely more dangerous to my health if we're talking about health. But I can do that. I have the right to do that. And I can choose to do it. My family should say that I shouldn't do it. And a lot of people, if they saw me eating donuts, would say, oh man, that guy needs to stop eating donuts. But I can eat as many donuts as I want, despite the fact that that'll give me 50 medical things. So that guy has the right to do what he wants. But at the same time, it saddens you to think that BJ Penn, who has enough money to do the things money
does
can,
he?
Yeah, apparently he does.
But let's
His
talk
family
about that. If you're
always
fighting
been,
in a time where the money's not so great, and
but
he's
he
winning
comes
world
from
titles.
Money. He comes
from money, but how many kids does he have? How big is his family? And he's 38 or 39 years old now. Well, he's got to conceivably live the second half of his entire life based on the money he earned in the first half of his life.
It doesn't sound like money is the reason.
I hope it's not, because legends like that shouldn't have to worry. But I often look at Mark Coleman and I think, damn, the fuck happened to that guy?
Yeah, when it is money, that is the saddest of the lot for me. Right. If you are saying, you still have that right, as long as you can get medically cleared, to say, of all the things in the world I could do between some physical labor or getting an education or, being in the service business or any of the choices, I'd rather go and put my body on the line to do it. You have the right to do that. We have the right to not pay to see you if you're too old. And you're too damaged, but you have the right to do that. But that one is sadder than I live for this. That one there's a joy in that. And on some level, that's what BJ felt and feels. But then the dark side is like, I can't sleep at night. I haven't accomplished anything. I want what. It's all nothing is simple. And people always try to make everything simple. You can't figure this out with a tweet. You can't figure this out with a series of 4 tweets. This is the reality of the life of one person and the opinions of people whose opinions shouldn't matter. To that person, and so it's a weird one. It felt bad for BJ, but if he wants to fight again, and they'll let him, and it's against Cole Miller or Dennis Seaver, I'll probably watch it.